Are you still quoting 30-year-old movies? Have you said cool beans in the past 90 days? Do you think Discover isn't widely accepted? If this sounds like you, you're stuck in the past. Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. And every time you make a purchase with your card, you automatically earn cash back. Welcome to the now. It pays to Discover. Learn more at discover.com/credit card. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report.
Today on CityCast Denver. The No Kings rally brought thousands of demonstrators downtown over the weekend, and producer Paul Karolyi was there. Plus, Stan Kroenke is at it again, adding more acres to his empire around the South Platte River. And a new report says that Denver Water is involved in the Broncos' secret land deals around a possible new stadium. We dig into these big stories and hear from one of our listeners about the ongoing fight over housing density in Littleton. Today is Tuesday, June 17th. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning.
Oh, man. We have to talk about the biggest story I think that everyone in the country is talking about right now, which was these No Kings protests over the weekend, coinciding with the 250th anniversary of the military plus Trump's birthday?
Yeah, I don't remember what the parade was, ostensibly about, but Trump's birthday.
Did you watch any of it?
I saw a picture of him that looked like he was falling asleep.
There was a lot of that. I saw a lot of clips of that. But
yeah, listeners know I'm no fan of violence, so a parade for military is like, this isn't doing it for me.
It was very weird to watch.
This doesn't feel like America to me.
Exactly. I think I was reading, he had been trying to do this for a long time. He'd been wanting to do this military parade, and all of his advisors in the background were like, please don't do this. It's weird. Please don't do it. It doesn't look like America. Don't do it. Don't do it. And then
the whole weekend gave me those, what country is this again vibes? Like the political assassination in Minnesota.
Okay.
That's the heavy side of this. I saw that news as I was getting ready to go walk out to the protests here in Denver.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, I got nervous. I got legit.
Sure.
I don't normally feel that way. I went down to the Trump rally last fall, and it was I was psyched up. This kind of thing is energizing for me.
Sure. This changes the tone, though. That was a really scary situation.
Super scary.
Very sad. Minnesota lost a public servant and her husband in a really, really scary way, and almost another politician as well, and his wife. And I agree. I opened my phone. I was in the mountains over the weekend for Father's Day with my family, but I opened my phone and I was like, this happened in America? But yeah, again, so you read that and then you walked out and you saw what was going on. I read there were over 2,000 No Kings protests in Colorado alone. So across the state, Greeley, I had friends in Grand Junction. It was all over. What was Denver's like?
Denver's, I was kind of surprised by how big it was, for one. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on Saturday, to be honest. Walking over, I think my main impressions were, gosh, it's hot. I thought, is this going to affect the turnout? And maybe it did. Number two, RTD shut down public transit around the protests. I don't know if seems like
I didn't.
Yeah, and it was specifically about the protests. I saw some rumors online about is this about an ozone day, or is this some track work? RTD, who knows what's going on? But they said, quote, this is from the Denver Post, RTD shut down Union Station and public transit in the area over safety concerns in coordination with DPD, which I had never heard of before. The police working with RTD to shut,
also, people, a lot of folks were coming from the suburbs to just join it and not drive their cars down here.
Yeah.
I can imagine, what if DC or New York was like, you know what, we're just going to shut down the subway while you guys are doing this thing. I can't imagine. That doesn't seem logical to me.
If I was an organizer of the protest, I would be very upset.
I would be too, because I feel like there was plenty of notice. There was lots of conversation. There was a lot of planning that went into this one from different organizations. And that feels very frustrating. And also we need public transit in these moments, especially. Folks are trying to be engaged. And
this is one of the perfect uses of public transit.
Well, let's talk about
downtown for stuff.
Right.
Buy stuff.
Right.
Do stuff.
Which you're
hang
inevitably
out, do democracy.
Which is inevitably what you're going to do if you're downtown for a few hours.
And I sure did. I saw some people out there. Because I walked up 16th Street not the
Not
mall,
the mall.
to get down to Civic Center. And I saw some people with protest signs, but they had brunch first. They got brunch at Chez Maggie first on that new patio they've got out there. It's beautiful.
I mean,
They had a nice day, those folks.
it makes sense to me. It was part of a planned afternoon. I knew a lot of folks that were doing stuff like that. And again, like I've said all year, folks I have never seen involved in protesting are getting involved. And I think this is one of those big moments. I mean, we saw protests at nursing homes where folks, maybe couldn't come out downtown, but still wanted to show their support.
That was another theme of the day, actually. The nursing home thing. I don't know how this messaging got started.
Really?
But I thought that the crowd on Saturday in Denver was like noticeably older. There were still a lot of like the young people there, young activist types, but old people like OG protester types with their, the old school signs. And like there was, you know how it is. People wearing all sorts of stuff.
Well, when we were talking about RTD and DPD and this concern about safety, how did things feel just in general being downtown?
Me personally, well, I didn't stay too long. I wasn't feeling awesome, so I didn't stick around until like I saw some reports of violent confrontations with police in the evening. Apparently, there were a couple of these offshoot groups that we've seen reports of last week. There was like 14 people arrested at Colfax and Osage, where they were reportedly throwing projectiles, resisting arrest, possession of controlled substance. 9 others arrested along Colfax. Another group trying to march onto I-25 near Coors Field. Those were in the evening. I didn't see any of that. I didn't see any violence. I didn't see any counter-protesters. I didn't see anyone getting riled up. I just saw, honestly, the theme of the day was like fun. It was a very light, fun day. And I think it's because they did this. This was another thing that got lost, but I got a little flyer as I came in.
Oh, nice.
It's got a bingo card for the activist bingo, the People's Fair is what they were calling it. But there was like a 4-hour long activist fair where there was
I saw our theme song creators, Los Mocochetes, played that.
That's their perfect. It was a great
Absolutely.
show. Those guys, the energy was on point. I really enjoyed seeing them there. But it was like all these progressive organizations had tables. They were selling like T-shirts, signs, protest materials.
Yeah.
Having fun, like playing games. Literally activist bingo. They gave me this flyer when I walked in. Then there's all sorts of things like complete an org's trivia, play a game, recite your next protest date, watch the capoeira performers at 3 p.m. It was like this is a protest, but it's also a fair.
But
and it's
also
also
seems
fun.
And that seems like a way to get folks to interact with organizations maybe that they aren't familiar with. I just want to see who some of these. So obviously, Party for Socialism and Liberation, Solidarity Warriors, Revision Co-op was there, Food Justice, Indivisible Denver. What I like about this approach is I feel like it's very inviting, and that's been a real struggle. I've noticed, at least, or my experience on the left is sometimes it's not inviting to folks that are not super familiar with political issues but want to be. And this seems like it was aiming to connect all those people.
I think it did. I think it was a huge success. If I were these people, I would be taking away from this more of this.
I think that's what people are hungry for.
Yeah.
Community information and how to feel like you're actually able to do something. So.
And Lord, a sense of humor. Oh my God. This has been so lacking at these protests, but finally the left shows up with some jokes. Oh man. Well, not the ice jokes. I have to say, I'm not trying to police this. I'm not the arbiter of this.
Oh, like the ice on the signs,
I have yet to see a good pun with ice melting or like ice breaking. It's not working for me. I mean, I'm not saying there's not a good one out there, but none of them worked for me. The one I'll shout out is some guy he made like a toilet out of paper mache and a little Trump head. And he had a plunger on the Trump head and he was holding it. So he was like pushing Trump's head down the toilet. And it said dethrone Trump, which is, that's on point for the theme.
Yes.
That's good.
Yep. A toilet, it's a throne.
And then the other two guys I have to talk about because literally I laughed out loud on the street when I saw these guys. I don't think they were part of it, but they had like big South Park energy. Two like, young men, very happy with themselves, had signs that said legalize recreational cocaine.
Oh my God.
And they were marching, which is like, is there medicinal cocaine, guys? But I mean, they were marching. What do we want? Cocaine. When do we want it? Now.
Oh my goodness. I don't know. Great. I have to say, if the humor is related to the topic, I appreciate it. That would just annoy me. But like,
probably,
your right to come out and be a part of it.
They're trolls.
Right, exactly. It's just real life trolling. So again, this was part of protests across the country.
Yeah.
I don't know if people are we asking, like, is this making a difference? That's kind of at the end of the day, what was the result? What do we think came from it?
Well, that is a big question. And I kind of wanted to ask you, have you seen any of this talk about this 3.5% thing around protests?
No, what's that?
I was reading about this over the weekend. There's this political scientist at Harvard named Erica Chenoweth, who, along with some colleagues, has been looking at the history of like protest movements and what's successful and what's not. And what she has found, and I'm going to quote from the BBC's write-up of this, is she, looking at hundreds of campaigns over the last century, Chenoweth found that nonviolent campaigns are twice as likely to achieve their goals as violent campaigns, which that part's not revolutionary. I think we've seen that before. But the interesting part to me was, and although the exact dynamics depend on many factors, she has shown that it takes around 3.5% of the population actively participating in the protests to ensure serious political change.
Interesting.
So there's like a critical mass she has found of once there's this amount of participation, then change will be likely to happen. 3.5%.
Lawmakers pay more attention, or like what is the...
Or like maybe more people have affiliations with the protesters, or it's more sympathetic. Like if you're a police officer on the line and you're thinking, okay, these protesters out here, and then you're like, oh, wait a second, but I recognize my neighbor.
Yeah.
Or wait a second,
okay.
I recognize that leader that has said something that I think is actually kind of cool.
So it's just there's enough people.
Yeah, or there's all these different connections, but once there's that critical mass, she says, according to her research, there's change is likely to happen. I thought this was fascinating.
How many people do we have an estimate for how many folks were out in Denver?
Right. So I did the math.
Okay.
What I saw was some of the organizers said there were around 20,000 Denverites on Saturday.
Oh, really?
That were at different times of day, because there was the fair for 4 hours and then there was a main march, but I think there was a few smaller marches. So 20,000 Denverites relative to the metro area itself, which is about 3 million. 3.5% of 3 million would have been 104,000.
Oh, that's a lot.
So we're still like 20% of the way to that critical mass, according to this Erica Chenoweth's benchmark.
I guess that's just Denver. I'm just thinking Denver Metro. Does that count the folks that were protesting in Littleton, Aurora, Westminster?
I don't know. That's a good point. I didn't think about that.
That would be something I'd be interested in, because I just know folks in those areas were out. Yeah. Like my mother-in-law went to the Littleton protest with her friends. Could probably add a few more. So interesting. Can I ask what the police presence was like? I never can tell from media what.
I didn't see them. There were some cars and like there's some dudes in SWAT gear, big guns posted up a couple of blocks away from the main protest. Okay. I didn't see any of it at the fair itself. Oh. I mean, you'll see there's photos online of the confrontations later in the day. Like in Capitol Hill, I think I saw a lot of pictures of, the police have this new technique where they're shooting these tear gas pellets at the ground. So the tear gas disperses
instead of at people.
So no one's getting hit by those.
That's good.
Yeah.
I mean,
seems like better policy.
Yeah, I saw some video too of the later in the evening sort of offshoot protests maybe. And the police presence compared to the amount of protesters was very off, but that's normally what I've noticed. So
you thought it was a lot? It looked like a lot.
So many compared to like a couple dozen protesters. And I was like, why are there like dozens and dozens and dozens of cops? Like, but
I don't know. They're prepared for the worst.
I guess, yeah.
I don't know how they make these decisions.
It's good to know that it sounds like for most of the day, folks were peaceful and
having a great time.
This episode is brought to you by Xcel Energy. It's starting to heat up here in the Mile High, which means it's time to think about keeping cool. At home, your air conditioning is the single most expensive appliance you'll use, and Xcel Energy is here to keep a lid on costs and take advantage of some great rebates. They've got cool tips like inspecting your AC unit regularly, changing your filters, and considering Xcel Energy's weather stripping rebates as a great way to keep that cool air inside for less. You can also pre-cool your home in the morning and use less AC in the afternoon. Just make sure your ceiling fans are drawing air upwards in the summer and close your drapes to cool off in the later part of the day. Okay, so there's a switch on your ceiling fan. Did you know about this? I feel like a lot of people don't know. It moves the direction of the air. It's like super cool and super simple. Hot tip. Make sure that you wipe all the dust off of your ceiling fan before you do this, or you just get dust everywhere. You can use Xcel Energy's Home Energy Squad to find even more ways to save money on home energy. Become even more energy aware by going to xlenergy.com/tips. Just check out xlenergy.com/tips to make your energy work for you.
This episode is sponsored by Babbel. Have you ever picked a vacation spot based on where you won't need a phrase book? With Babbel, the language barrier no longer has to hold you back. You can start speaking a new language with confidence thanks to Babbel's conversation-based techniques, which quickly teach you useful words and phrases about the things you actually talk about in the real world. Babbel has more than a dozen languages available for you to learn at your own pace, with material tailored to your individual proficiency level, interests, and time availability. I'm David Ploth, CEO of CityCast, and I've been learning Spanish with Babbel. What I really love about learning Spanish with Babbel is that it works with me where I am. The app and the website keep track of what I've learned. They help me review what I probably forgot from last time, and always is keeping me engaged with a new challenge based on actual conversations I might have in Spain or Mexico or Colombia, especially food conversations, because I love food conversations. So get talking with Babbel. I want you to learn another language, so I'm teaming up with Babbel to give you 55% off subscriptions, but only for CityCast listeners at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 55% off at babbel.com/CityCast. Spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Babbel.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Shall we move on to our next story?
Yeah, let's do.
All right, so we've got a couple of reports here about some of our local billionaires and what they're up to.
Just buying up the city.
Selling land. Yeah. So what do you want to start with? You want to start with Silent Stan Kroenke?
Yeah.
Okay. He owns the Nuggets. He owns the he owns the Nuggets. He owns the Avalanche. He owns the Rapids. He owns Arsenal, the soccer team in England.
Oh.
He owns the LA Rams.
I knew that.
He owns a lot. He owns a lot of land.
But he also owns a lot of land here. The ball arena has been his big project, the parking lots around there. But he had been a partner in this River Mile development, which is in like Sun Valley area. It connects to the ball arena project. And
I thought River Mile was mostly going to be the land under Elitch Gardens.
Right. Well, that's part of this that's a big part of this conversation. Was this last week. I remember when we had Patty on the show. Patty Calhoun, editor of Westward, she was like showing me a press release about this right before the news hit. But he basically bought out his partner, Revesco Properties, Reese Duggan, and now is sole owner of that. So the land under Meow Wolf, Elitch's, I think, what did Patty report? 117 acres, I think, total now. Yeah, the Kroenkes will now own 117 acres of downtown.
That makes sense. It's all contiguous with the ball arena parking lots. We know that he's trying to build a whole new neighborhood there. Yes. I mean, I think it was always envisioned as one urban unit, the River Mile area and now the ball arena parking lots. But I guess he's the sole owner of the rest of that land now. And
I feel like when you can connect the Elitch Gardens property and the Meow Wolf property in your mind as well as ball arena, it makes a little bit more sense, because it's kind of hard to see how those, unless you're down there, it's hard to see how those are connected because there's highways going over it and stuff. So
what are the implications for Elitch's and Meow Wolf?
We don't know. I think that's the weirdest part, is there was just not a lot of, there wasn't, what I loved was Kyle Harris at Denver Heights said, quote, Elitch Gardens and Meow Wolf fans both will continue to operate where they are for now. So I think it's still a lot of we don't know.
I feel like Elitch's does this every year, where there's always speculation, is this the last year? And they're like, maybe. And all they want to do is to create that artificial scarcity of like, you got to go ride that Twister 3 one more time.
I mean, I've been skeptical from the beginning that they're going to relocate this thing. Amusement parks are so expensive, and I'm sure their insurance is insane. It almost feels like a relic of a different time to me. But they have, again, there's no promises have been made about the future of Elitch Gardens. So
that's another one, another show, I guess. But the Meow Wolf one is interesting because they just built that building. Mm-hmm. So they're not going to knock it down and build high rises or something there, I don't think.
No, right? I mean, think about where it is too. It goes up between an highway interchange.
Yeah.
And also it has no windows except for in their offices.
Yeah. Okay. So that's.
I'm feeling it's
I don't know
just
what
going to
else you'd-
stay there and be part of this quote entertainment district would be my guess.
Probably.
I don't know what else you would do with that or why you would want to do something different with it. But 10, 20 years from now, who knows?
We'll see.
We'll see.
The other one, the other billionaires. Shall we move on? Mm-hmm. The Broncos.
The
Walton family. The Penner Waltons, specifically, Sean Penner and
which is
the rest of
Kroenke
the Walton
adjacent.
clan. Yeah, I think I don't know how they're related. Cousins or something through marriage, maybe.
I can't remember either.
Yeah.
So someone's married to somebody, but
The Broncos. We know they're looking for a new stadium. We heard some reports last week that they were buying up land around Burnham Yards, the
Which
old
is the rail
yard,
yard.
by the Buckhorn Exchange. What did we
Well-
learn today?
Business Den reported that top executives at Colorado's largest and oldest water utility, Denver Water, have been meeting regularly over the past year with the NFL team's top executives and some Denver officials in tow. So there's just a lot of memos about weekly check-ins is what they found in this information request. But Mayor Johnson's chief of staff, Jen Ritter, was there. Bill Mosier, chief development officer, was there. So these are folks that are definitely crucial to the Johnson administration when it comes to big decisions. So
That's interesting, that piece of it. The Johnson, I can understand why they would be invested in what happens with the Broncos. They must want the Broncos to stay in the city. So they'd probably be there trying to facilitate this relationship with Denver Water, which owns a lot of land over there.
So Denver Water owns about 35 acres in the immediate area. So they're at 1600 West 12th Avenue in La Alma, Lincoln Park. It's a brand new building. You were just
I was just there last week.
Last week, Paul. It's
I
less.
should have been suspicious when I saw John Elway there tossing the ball around.
Hanging out in this beautiful building surrounded by parking lots. But so they own that building and 35 acres in that area. And it says, Business End said the Broncos' interest in the granular details about Denver Water's land holdings further suggests that the team has zeroed in on Burnham Yard as a site for the new stadium. So that's the speculation there.
Yeah, makes sense. So the secret's out, really.
So this Denver Water section, these 35 acres connecting to what they called a crescent of land in Burnham Yard would make it much more amenable to something large like a stadium and an entertainment district. As it stands, it sounds like the Burnham Yard section that they've purchased doesn't seem quite big enough, but this would make it more worth their while. So that's where the speculation is happening.
Do we know anything about... I mean, this is probably a ways off, but the city, the mayor, just kind of bet big and threw himself behind this National Women's Soccer League stadium and has proposed doing quite a bit of public subsidy for it.
Yeah.
Do we know anything about the mayor's, willing to put the city behind a deal or help buy up this land?
Very light on details as to why the city was involved. But that came to my mind as well, because that again would be a massive redevelopment around a stadium, which we had talked at length about. And I was just thinking about these projects in conjunction with each other and how Denverites might feel about that massive amount of change and what tax subsidies might look like and how we do or don't want this to happen would be a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, it's also an opportunity for the city to kind of put their money where their mouth is, because what they're saying about the National Women's Soccer League stadium is it's important for us to own the land, because the big chunk of the money they want to spend is to buy the land that the stadium will be built on, and they point to the Empower Field as a reason why that's good, because if and when the Broncos move, the city owns that land currently, so. What do we want to do with that land, city? Give us some positive, forward-looking some kind of plan there if the stadium does move, the Broncos stadium, and then that would give us more of a reason to think, hey, it might be valuable to own the land under the National Women's Soccer League stadium.
I mean, this could be interesting speculation around why Denver officials are at these meetings.
Yeah.
For this particular stadium project, which again is not that far from where the National Women's Soccer. This is all a very close part of town. So I live over there. I'm very interested to see how this plays out.
All of our local rich people and their secret land dealings.
It's 150 million here, 150 million there, whatever.
Invite me to the Zoom meetings, folks. Just put me on the Zoom. Just Paul Karolyi at citycast.fm. Yeah, put me on the check-in. Sometimes I'll be there. Sometimes I'm not going to be able to make it, sadly. But I would love to join.
I bet. Yeah. No, I don't want to make any guesses about if we could get on there or not.
No, they're not going to put us on the Zoom meetings. They should.
You never know. You never know. Well, we'll be watching that as usual. We've had a couple great episodes about both of these stadium projects and Kronkiville. I mean, this whole thing. So we can put some links in the show notes if you want to learn more. But it's a really fascinating look at a part of the city that it's probably going to see some massive changes over the next couple of decades.
This episode is brought to you by Cozy Earth. Denver summers are brutal, and my beloved swamp cooler can only do so much to keep my family cool in this ancient house when we start hitting those 100-degree days that turn into sweaty, sleepless nights. Ugh. Luckily, I got some new sheets from Cozy Earth, and they're temperature regulating, made from viscose from bamboo. That means they naturally wick away heat and moisture from your body, helping you sleep cooler. But I get it, good bedding is an investment. That's why Cozy Earth offers a 100-night sleep trial. Try them out during the hottest nights of the year, and if you're not in love, you can return them hassle-free. But trust me, I don't think you're going to want to. Plus, they offer a 10-year warranty on all bedding products. That's a decade of cool, quality sleep. Upgrade your summer now. Go to CozyEarth.com and use code CozyDenver for 40% off their best-selling temperature-regulating sheets, apparel, and more. Trust me, you will feel the difference the very first night. Again, just go to CozyEarth.com and use code CozyDenver for 40% off their best-selling temperature-regulating sheets, apparel, and more. When I was a kid, you didn't have to have AC. Now you do. Or you just have a swamp cooler like me, a really good fan, and some kick-ass sheets.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
Well, before we go, we always love to hear from you, our brilliant and hilarious listeners. You send us great comments and thoughts and questions that come in through our CityCast Denver hotline and our email. Paul, what do we have this week? We have a voicemail?
We got a voicemail from Audrey.
Okay.
Hi, this is Audrey Howes, and I'm a Littleton resident. And I listened to the podcast. Thank you so much for covering Littleton. Unfortunately, I believe the Rooted in Littleton group gave a misleading view.
I should pause here. This is in response. The Rooted in Littleton group she's referring to, this is what some people would call the YIMBY group in this housing density battle happening in Littleton.
Okay.
So there was a survey, and they said that they commissioned this survey, and they say that it backed up their own perspective. Of course, they commissioned the survey, so it's going to have some of it. Anyway, this is what Audrey's saying. Audrey can go on.
They claimed that 76% of registered voters in Littleton want a say on housing legislation, but that's just based on a survey they did, and they only received 1,195 responses out of the nearly 40,000 adults who live in Littleton. They also suggested that the proposed change would lock in zoning, when in fact it would actually lock in land use, which is very different. No one is being forced to develop their property in Littleton. The proposed changes in January, had they passed, would have simply given property owners a few options. And even then, I think visible changes to neighborhoods would have taken years. As you noted, these debates can get heated, and sadly, I've seen Rooted in Littleton violate park permits and have heard from friends who have felt pressured by their neighbors into signing, which doesn't feel right, and raises into questions the validity of their signatures. All of us Littleton residents care about where we live, but I believe if we're going to change the city's charter, the process needs to be honest, respectful, legal, and rooted in genuine neighborliness. Because if the roots in this petition are fear, exclusion, and broken rules, I would question what kind of tree we're growing in Littleton. Thanks again.
That was really thoughtful.
That was a great voicemail. Thanks for calling in, Audrey.
I mean, I think that it just really zeroes in. It really makes you zoom in on how this fight plays out amongst neighbors. Mm-hmm. I mean, literally the people next to you, not just some anonymous group of people. These are folks that you interact with every day, and that feels very stressful. That was really helpful clarification, or at least a perspective. But Paul, you talked to the mayor of Littleton reached out to us after this episode, right?
Yeah, we got quite a bit of response to this episode. I think it was circulated in the Vibrant Littleton circles, which is like the folks that are more like pro-density, or like smart change, I think they would say. that have more of a positive vision of what Littleton could be with a little bit more housing density. So among them, the current mayor, Kyle Schlachter, reached out. I chatted with him last week. I think we might have him on the show soon.
Yeah,
He was an interesting
so interested
guy.
To hear from him.
Just someone who's like done the housing density work that Denver's about to embark on, and then he's gotten kind of embroiled in this debate that there's parts of it that he would say he doesn't understand. He feels like it's gotten very confusing, and the Rooted in Littleton people have they put forward this petition, and there's a lot of doesn't even make sense. Could it even be put in place if it does get on the ballot and passes? The questions about the survey are interesting. I mean, I sometimes worry about how we talk about surveys, and we got some feedback on this too, because there's a million caveats to every survey, but I think people know that too, though. Yes, surveys have biases built in. Different people doing surveys, obviously, some do them more, straightforward way, and some people don't. Some people are using them to make their points.
Right, and that's what I think about is I got this weird survey. I don't know why I got it, but it was it said how you feel about illegal aliens, which is not a term I use, but that turned me off to even taking the survey. And then I thought, is my perspective valuable in this space? Because I do maybe have a differing perspective than who is angling the questions. So it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to know who you're if you're sure, you're targeting people with a survey, but are you getting a full perspective? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the true survey, as it always will be, is in November when the proper election happens and people actually get to go vote. And anyway, there was one other thing. This is from my conversation with the mayor, Kyle Schlachter, that I wanted to clarify, because I shared a worry from one of the folks I talked to from Rooted in Littleton about he felt like his property individually, his home, was targeted by this proposed change to the land use ordinance.
Okay.
He thought that if the ordinance that was being debated back in January would have gone through, that he would have had developers lining up at his door because it was in one of these it was on a specific list, was what he said. So this, I think, grabbed some people's attention because you kind of understand, you sympathize with a guy. Lines of developers come in to try to buy your land. That sounds a little uncomfortable.
It's I have a friend who went through this. It's really stressful.
Yeah. So Kyle Schlachter, Mayor Schlachter, clarified there was at no point a list. The planning board, the mayor, no one had a list of properties, and they were like, this one should be developed into a duplex. This one should be scraped and turned into a fourplex. He said, quote, people were looking at an imagined worst case scenario by looking at high level ideas and not understanding the details of how code worked. Just because something is allowed somewhere doesn't mean it could actually happen there. For example, if someone wants to build a shed, that might be allowed under zoning, but not for your specific yard. People were imagining a large axe when we were talking about a scalpel.
I feel like our listener brought this up too. Zoning and land use are two different things. And I have to say, even someone that worked in planning, it still can be very confusing. And I think that's part of this issue here is people are just confused.
Yeah, so it would be worth getting into it a little bit more detail with the mayor. I hope we can have him on soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this was so nice to hear. I mean, I think this is, again, we are having this conversation all the time. And maybe what can we learn from Littleton as Denver endeavors on something like this?
I'd be curious.
Fascinating.
Well, listeners, anytime you want to call in, leave us a question, leave us feedback, we love it. It's my favorite thing that we do.
We do.
The phone number to call is 720-500-5418.
You can text us or leave us a voicemail.
720-500-5418.
Well, thanks, Paul.
See you next time.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed this show, why not take a minute to tell the legalized recreational cocaine guys about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to our morning newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. And hey, thanks to our new neighbors, Brian B., Andrea P., and Grant R., who just joined our membership program. You can join now at membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See you later.